Well, speaking from the loggia of the St. Peter's Basilica before a crowd of as many as 100,000 people, Pope Leo XIV delivered his first Sunday noon blessing as pontiff, again offering a hint of some of the issues he's likely to focus on. The Pope appealed to the world's major powers to stop wars, calling more specifically for an authentic and lasting peace in Ukraine, a ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all Israeli hostages held by Hamas as well. And then he also hailed the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, adding that he is praying for God to grant the world the miracle of peace. Here's our correspondent Seema Gupta with the details.
It clearly was a very powerful message, a very strong appeal for the end of wars. Never again war, he said. And in fact, he talked about how he was reminded that, earlier this week, the world commemorated 80 years since the end of World War II. And so he specifically mentioned Pope Francis, saying that in a way, what we're experiencing right now is a World War III, as Pope Francis said himself, wars that are being done in piecemeal around the world. And he highlighted the situation in Ukraine, his beloved Ukraine, that he said, as well as the situation in Gaza, in the Middle East. But he also talked about how he was happy to receive news of a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and hoping that those two countries would also negotiate and reach a lasting peace. So it was very clear, in a way, a continuation of Francis, when Francis had talked about those two particular conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, but he also talked about what's happening in South Asia as well. Pope Leo XIV then went on to greet the crowd, more than 100,000 people gathering in St. Peter's Square and the roads around to celebrate this event. It was the first time they knew he was going to be there for this important Regina Coeli prayer, the prayer in honor of Mary that happens on the fourth Sunday after Easter. And so it was important for people to be there. And interestingly enough, he also wished a happy Mother's Day, because today is Mother's Day, to all those that were gathered there, including those mums that are no longer with us.
We're going to turn back now to our top story. That's the latest between Russia and Ukraine, of course. And we're going to try and bring back Melinda Haring. As a reminder, she is a Ukraine expert and non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Melinda, so hopefully you won't hear that annoying echo then this time around. Tell us from the Kremlin's perspective then, why do you think Vladimir Putin would propose direct talks instead of just simply agreeing to that temporary ceasefire first?
Hey, Aaron, this is really about a war of perceptions. So both Zelensky and Putin want to be on Donald Trump's good side, and they're both trying to show really hard that they're honoring his idea. Remember, it was Donald Trump's idea to have a 30-day ceasefire. So both side is trying to agree because they want Donald Trump on their side. That's really what we see. And Putin also thinks he can get away with more by not agreeing to the ceasefire. I don't think he's really serious about stopping the war. And if there is a ceasefire, he's going to face all kinds of annoying, from his perspective, international eyeballs on him, forcing him, talking about all of his ceasefire violations. That's why he does not want a ceasefire right now.
So we heard the leaders of the coalition of the willing yesterday urge Putin to accept that truce or face more sanctions. But at this point, is the prospect of more sanctions even dissuasive at all for Moscow? And similarly, I mean, do Western leaders have any other dissuasive cards to play?
So, Aaron, they definitely don't like those sanctions. After the coalition of the willing proposed them, you heard all kinds of statements coming from Moscow, from its press secretary, from Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, saying, we know how to get around them. So they definitely don't want more. And the sanctions that are being proposed would be hard hit. They're talking about fossil fuels and oil, the things that Russia really relies on to keep its economy going. And yes, there are additional measures that the coalition could take. The Germans, for instance, could send more air defense systems. They're considering it. They could also send Taurus missiles, the long-range rockets that the German government has been unwilling to send so far. So there's all kinds of ways that the coalition can amp things up.
Melinda, as a final question for you, the Kremlin is reportedly taking into account an abandoned 2022 draft deal known as the Istanbul Communique, on top of the reality of Russia's control right now of over a fifth of Ukrainian territory. What else do we know about what was in that Istanbul Communique, and what might that suggest about what Moscow expects its conditions for peace?
Aaron, thanks for that question. So I expect Moscow to dust off that 2022 communique, and it has a lot of things that are unacceptable to Ukraine and to the Western community. So it's going to be a non-starter if that's where the Russians decide to come out. So they want NATO neutrality in Ukraine. They want severe restrictions on the Ukrainian army, and that's definitely a non-starter for the Ukrainian side. They want sanctions relief for Russia. They want they want to annex or contested oblasts, and they want Crimea to officially be part of Russia. So these are going to be all really tricky issues.
Melinda Haring, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, thank you so very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.